So we'll probably go ahead and get started now. Welcome everyone. We're really excited for our first student town hall. And we're so thankful that everyone's joined us on this Monday evening. I am Shawna King, and I am a home birth midwife. A little bit about myself. I entered midwifery school with a bachelor's in biology, and I was a direct entry student. I went to SUNY Downstate, and I started there in 2000. I was, I think, maybe one of the very early classes. Maybe I was like the third class of CM students there. I graduated in 2002, and I practiced as a midwife in hospital for 17 years, and then started my home birth practice and doing community midwifery in 2019. I'm going to co-hosting tonight with Tania. We're going to be answering questions that come through the chat. So please, fill the chat with comments and questions, and that's how we're going to be responding to everyone. We have a panel of amazing home birth midwives that have volunteered to be with us here tonight to hopefully answer all the questions that we can answer in the next hour. So I'm going to turn it over to Tania, and we'll get started.
Thank you, Shawna. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Tania Zirulnik. I've been a home birth midwife for a few years. I've been a midwife for about 20 years and doing home birth for about 13. I'm originally from Peru, so that's where I did my midwifery training. And then was able to get my license here in 2011, and that's when I started officially my practice, Luna Home Birth. Tonight we have 5 panelists that are going to be answering your questions. So I want to first introduce them to you so that you all know them, get familiar with them, and then we'll go ahead and answer questions. So first we have Chen. She graduated in 2009 from Steinreuck University. Prior to that, she was a NICU nurse. She has worked in different settings, from hospital to the birthing center to home birth, which is what she's doing currently. Then we have Eva Martineau. She graduated as a bachelor in nursing and master's in nurse midwifery at SUNY Downstate. She also holds a master's in public health from Columbia University. She's been she's been a birth worker for about 12 years by the way of birth assistant, nurse, childbirth educator, and lactation consultant. And she started home birth about 2 years ago. We also have Annalee Reid. She started her path to become a certified professional midwife at the Midwives College of Utah in 2014. However, in 2017, she moved back to New York City to find that she could not get licensed as a certified professional midwife here in New York. So she had to start all over again and study at SUNY Downstate. She completed the midwifery program and graduated in 2020 with a master's of science in midwifery. We also have Julia Steinreuck. She graduated from SUNY Downstate in 2021 as a nurse midwife. She is currently part of the Midwifery Care NYC and also the Holistic Midwifery NY groups. She has also worked as a birth assistant and as a labor and delivery nurse. And finally, we have Nicole Chen. She graduated from NYU as a nurse midwife in 2012. And she started her professional journey at Maimonides Medical Center, and then she transitioned into home birth in 2020. And since then, she has been supporting numerous families on their journey to parenthood. So now you know all your panelists, and we'll start answering some questions. Okay, so here we go. Let me just see. How did you get started in home birth? Let's see. Jen, would you like to answer that question?
Sure. I actually love the different settings. So when I was a student, I kind of researched and did my, I think I shadowed a lot of different home birth midwife, and Kim Sung is actually someone that I actually shadowed. And she taught me a lot during my journey. And of course, like, you know, my friend Janisha, she kind of gave me that push, like, okay, you should do that. After being a midwife for like 10 years, she was like, okay, maybe you should just do home birth also. So because she's also doing that on the side at that time. So I kind of followed her footsteps in a way. So I think it's good to explore different settings as a midwife instead of like, you know, when you're in hospital, you only see one side. So I explored all different sides, private setting, the home birth setting, the birthing center setting, the hospital setting. So you kind of know and keep yourself well-rounded in a way where you know how everything operates. So if you need to transfer anyone, you kind of know how to get the best way and best treatment for your clients. So that's how I started.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Nicole, would you like to also share a little bit of your experience of how did you get started from working at a hospital into a home birth setting?
Sure. So when I was in midwifery school, my director of the program used to be a home birth midwife. So she shared a lot of her stories and videos with us as students. However, it was unfortunate. I was in love with it. Like, I fell in love with her process, with her showing us how she used to practice. Unfortunately for me, I didn't get to experience or shadow any home birth midwife until after working as a midwife for about 7 years at Maimonides. And then after I was reintroduced to the home birth world, like I just fell in love with it. And I was a birthing assistant at first, and I shadowed a lot of home birth midwives, and I fell in love with it. And I was just like, why not? Noonie pushed me to do it. And then Shawna was doing it. And then everybody, a lot of people that I knew was doing it. So I'm like, hey, why not? So it felt good. I worked at the birthing center for a little bit just to see the difference from hospital and birthing center and home birth. And it just brought me right back to home birth. So I became a home birth midwife.
Thank you, Nicole.
You're welcome.
We have a next question here. Did you feel school prepared you for starting a practice? Annalee, do you think you can answer that question, please?
Sure. It's different for me because I was in 2 different schools. In my first program, yes. Because for certified professional midwives, all people that graduate go straight into home birth. That's what we're trained for. And so from day 1 of the program, we're like told, you are a midwife, you are going to be in the home, you are going to be opening your own practice. We were made to do practice guidelines. As we learned about different conditions, we were like writing out our practice guidelines for our future practices. In the CM program that I did at Downstate, they're gear the education more to entering into a hospital space initially, for sure. So it is not much more than maybe a couple of sessions with maybe a home birth midwife panel, maybe year 1 or 2. Ava maybe can collaborate with that. Yeah, like 1 or 2 home birth panels. And then on year 1 or 2, also they had a panel with providers that had their own practices and what the insurance situations look like. So in preparation for running your own practice, the best thing for you to do is to be with other midwives that have their own practice. That's really the only way that you'll learn. For me, I was blessed to have Takia Ballard as my mentor when I started this practice, and she was like right here side by side, and like, let me teach you this, let me teach you that. And that was like an invaluable gift. And that's the way that I would recommend doing it.
Annalee,
Thank
Annalee, there's a direct question to you, which is asking, so just to follow up what you had said, as a CPM before becoming a CM, did you ever consider working under another midwife's license? And what made you decide to go to school instead of possibly that route?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was a really, really, really hard decision because I paid completely out of pocket for that first program. And I thought about it for maybe like 2 seconds. I thought about being in Jersey and then just, still being in New York because this is where my family is. But I also knew that I wanted to work in the New York community in the city, specifically serving Black and Brown people specifically. And so I knew that I had like a big vision for what I wanted to offer in service, and it wouldn't have worked for me to work under another. It would have been hard, like, to facilitate that, and that's not a restriction that I wanted. So 0.2 seconds is how long I like toggled with that. I prayed a lot about it. And then I just, in my head at the time, I was like, it's just gonna make me a better midwife. And at that time, I was like, well, if I will be able to serve hospital clients as well as community clients, then maybe that's what is needed for me from the universe, from God. And so I just kind of rode with that, but then I ended up coming right back to home birth. So there we go.
Thank you, Annalee. Ava, how do you suggest someone get started from school?
I think that there are many, many paths. I can just share about my own path, and maybe I can talk a little bit about what others around me have done out of school to go into community midwifery, that being home birth midwifery or birth center based midwifery, which unfortunately the options here in the New York City area are non-existent. But for me, it was purely by connection. I went to school with someone who had Kim's son, who Yuen sort of mentioned earlier, as her midwife. And this person didn't end up continuing midwifery school. She's a lawyer and just, a magnificent person. And she realized, she didn't need to be a midwife to bring about the changes that she wanted. And so she set about on her own path, but she connected me to the practice that I'm with now. And eventually we hit it off and we realized that, it would be a good fit. And that's how I joined their practice. Other people have done cold calls to home birth midwives and said, hey, do you need a birth assistant? I'm happy to, tag along. And then that's how they make their connections. I think Annalee mentioned that, yes, it's important to sort of expose yourself and volunteer yourself and learn a little bit more about what home birth looks like, especially if, I don't know where people are joining us from tonight, but if you're in the New York City area, most of the programs in New York City do not, I would say, prepare us for the skill set that is required in the out-of-hospital setting. We're trained to work within the system, but there is an entirely different, very diverse, very rich skill set that is missing from, I would say, from our institutions that teach us midwifery currently, at least in New York City. And I feel like they exist in CPM programs and other programs outside of the state where there is more of an apprenticeship model, such as NARM, I would say. So yeah, I think that if you're thinking about getting started, connecting with people sooner than later who are home birth midwives, if you have the flexibility to go out of state and volunteer your services, even better, because sometimes if you're local, the market might be saturated, but there are tons of opportunities to work in the hospital setting in places where there are less midwives and less obstetric providers out in fields. And you'd be surprised how much you can learn when you've got to be it when it comes to the resuscitation and to management of hemorrhage. And, there's a hospital, I don't know, 50 miles away. And so I'd say that if you have that flexibility, take it while you can. And network away.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your experience on that. I have a question for Julia next. It's actually kind of like two questions. How do you balance being on call? And do you prefer to work with another midwife or in a solo practice?
So I am actually in a very unique situation where I work part-time for two different groups of midwives. So I've never had a solo practice, and I don't have the experience to really answer what that would be like to balance being on call. In terms of just going between the two practices, I don't know, I worked it out between them, figured out how to have a call schedule with everybody. And then for the most part, the people that I work with are wonderful and understanding. And if I've been up at a birth all night, they also are happy if I can reschedule my visits and get some rest the next day. So it's, yeah, working with good people is pretty amazing. Sorry, I don't have a better answer to that one.
Thank you. No, thank you. That's good. Nicole, do you think you could add a little bit to what it's like having a solo practice? Have you ever considered partnering with someone? You're on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute. So having a solo practice can be challenging. However, the home birth midwives were very, we work well with each other, right? We support each other. So like, I've grouped up with a couple of midwives and say, I have to go away for the weekend. And I'll reach out and one of them will cover me and vice versa. I'll cover them. If someone needs to go out and do something, we cover each other. So it can be challenging. However, the support is there to help to get coverage from other solo practice midwives in your community, in your area. I mean, I'm in Westchester and I've had coverage from Brooklyn and vice versa. So it works. It's hard, but it works out once you build that community.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to pass this question to Annalee. This is from someone looking into entering midwifery school soon. They're asking, are there certain programs that allow the flexibility to gain clinical hours with homebirth midwives?
So clinical hours at least in this region will not be applied to home birth practices because of the malpractice situation that most of us don't have malpractice insurance. We rely on our relationships with our clients. We are usually upfront about the fact that we don't have malpractice insurance when doing consultations. And so because of that, the schools are not able to allow their students, or this is the policy that they have, that they don't provide home birth rotations to midwifery students. So again, putting yourself in community with the people that you see here or that are, on social media or going to the meetings, et cetera, and just asking like, hey, can I shadow you? Can I be with you? I'm in midwifery school now, but I can't do a rotation for home birth, but I'd like to get some extra hours with you every week or what have you. And most of us are really happy to do that. But we want people that are dedicated and being intentional. So if you are that person, reach out and we're usually happy to support in whatever way we can.
Thank you. Jen, what are your biggest pieces of advice for moving from hospital midwifery into home birth midwifery? If you can help us answer that.
I think to explore the options, right? Like when you do the transition, it's always good to actually follow some home birth midwives before you transition. There's no, you can jump right away and like, commit to just home birth. And sometimes you can slowly transition too. I feel like it's always good to explore and follow a couple of home birth midwives and do as many birth and explore any birth that you can. I think that it's always exciting as a midwife to see any birth. In all settings, it always still give me the tingles. So I was like, okay, birth is happening. If I didn't have a birth for like a couple of months, like, I don't know what's going on. And even when you work in the hospital, you might not see a birth for a long time, depends on what the setting is. Sometimes they have residents that does the birth. If you're not the one who's actually covering the floor, you might be just covering triage, so you might want to be exploring the fact that you might want to follow and do more birth, because even in a hospital setting, you might not get a lot of birth, So it is good to do as much as possible. Don't be shy, just reach out to any of us. I think that we'll be happy to take you on, and you can shadow any of us, to see more during your journey. And then you can actually transition and see, okay, how do I get started? How do we, continue, right? And then we support each other continuously. It's not like we just stopped, you'll never stop learning. That's one of the things that we have to remember. It's not like once you finish school, that's it. That's just the beginning of the journey. That is just your basic.
I wanted to speak to that too. That's a great answer, Yuen. I transitioned to home birth from hospital after I'd been a midwife for 17 years. And I didn't just like start a practice and clients. I actually went to births with other midwives for almost 6 months, just sort of sampling. I was at the birthing center doing because I hadn't worked out of hospital. And it's very different than being in the hospital. I had to actually unlearn a lot of things after 17 years. And so I spent time at the Brooklyn Birthing Center for about 6 months, and then was also shadowing other home birth midwives during that time. And then finally, one of my dear friends said to me, just start your own dang practice. Like, what's your problem? So I started my practice, and it's been beautiful, and the community is amazing. So just to say, people are very, like everyone has said, people are very open to mentoring and allowing people to shadow. And we want to share these experiences because even what you get at school as a midwife, it's not the same as the hands-on and what happens in reality. So it's always great to have that experience if you can.
Thank you, Shawna, for sharing your experience. I also wanted to share my experience as well, because in my case, it was a little different. I was from another country. I had graduated from a different program. So when I came here and I had to go through all the legalities of my residency and all that, I used that time to birth assist another home birth midwife, which I did for 4 years. And it really allowed me to, by the time I was able to get my license, I felt very confident that I could start my practice. That being said, it's not that everybody has to take 4 years to do that, but it was just what I needed to take to get my paperwork. But I wanted to link this to the next question, which is how best to locate, contact home birth midwives willing to precept. All the home birth midwives are listed on our website, nyhomebirth.com. You can find us all there. You have our contact information there, so you can always reach out. And if we are available and we can do it, we'll be happy to help you. So the next question, how much does it cost to start a home birth practice? Coming from a Columbia student with a lot of loans. We understand. Look, yeah, I'm going to ask that to someone who has a solo practice. Nicole, would you like to answer that?
I don't think you guys want me to answer. So it has its benefits. However, home birth, not everyone could afford home birth, right? And not all insurances are willing to pay for
Your
for my
practice.
Yeah,
Okay.
this
Your
to
practice.
start your practice, yes.
Honest with you, I don't remember how much it cost to start my practice because I was still working as a midwife. So like when I first started, I wasn't like counting how much money it took to do these things because I had the income constantly coming in. It was just about building my birthing bag and getting the supplies that I needed, which wasn't really really much because there's a lot of websites out there that you could purchase from. So I don't know how much it costs to start it. However, it wasn't bad. I didn't keep track of it, but it wasn't like it doesn't put you into bankruptcy to start your practice.
If I can add to that, I know labs will give you a lot of supplies. If there's the biggest initial cost will be your Doppler. You want a good Doppler, and I think we can all agree to that. And the cost of a Doppler is somewhere between $500 and $700 for a brand new fancy Doppler. And then the rest is, IV supplies. And then, like I said, labs will provide you with a lot of those things that you need for the everyday practice.
Yeah.
And then you keep building to that. I don't know if anybody else wants to add to it. Is there another big cost that you consider, like when you first started? No, I guess that was the Doppler only.
So
And it depends on how you want to sterilize your instruments. You can really go the inexpensive way to getting the most expensive sterilization machine. But yeah.
For me, because also when I started, I did all home visits for the first 2 years. So actually, my overhead costs were very low because I didn't have office expenses. And one thing that was advised to me when I started my practice, because I did just quit my job cold turkey. I was like, I'm quitting, I'm getting started. Whereas other people might overlap between a job that they had before and so that they still have income, but I started with no income. So I needed this practice to start to work and to make money. So most of us take a retainer up front. And so I was basically living off of the retainer until I was getting paid from insurances for births that I did. And so that was kind of how I lived for the first 6 months. And then I started getting payments from insurance companies, and it actually becomes pretty fluid pretty quickly.
Thank you, Shawna. Annalee, is there anything you wanted to add?
no, I was just gonna also say that if you can choose to not have office costs, and that will, definitely decrease the cost of your starting up. And then really it's just the Doppler, medications, and emergency supplies for the birth itself. Because prenatal visits, like you said, the labs take care of like pretty much all of your supplies for that. And then yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Also, and if you drive a car, you just have to budget for your parking tickets. But yeah, other than that, you should be good to start. There's a question here. Are any of you familiar with Thomas Jefferson University's CM program? Anybody want to answer that question? Not me. No? All right, sorry. We'll just pass on that one then. All right, the next question, it says, is there any reason you will say not to do home birth? I have family members telling me not to do home birth, but I would prefer to hear from you. I'm assuming this means to have a midwifery practice, or you're pregnant and are considering a home birth. So I'm assuming this refers more to starting a home birth practice? Am I right? Who asked this question? Can we get clarification from the person who asked this question? As a midwife, yeah. So to start a home birth practice. Okay, so is there any reason why would you say not to start a home birth practice? Let's see, how can I ask? Eva, would you like to answer that?
I mean, the first answer that comes to mind, because obviously I'm in it and I love it, so it's hard to answer that from the other side of the coin. But if I had to say, it's because you don't enjoy it. And so when you're if you're thinking about becoming a home birth midwife, you come to the table understanding that it is it's a setting where you're going against the larger system. So it can be hard in many ways. It's not the default for people. There are a ton of barriers to accessing care. For clients, if you want to do, although most of us take Medicaid and that works out very well, but if you are the type of person that I thought I used to be, where I want to reach everyone in the world and I want to, care for a bunch of people and feel that I'm making a big difference and not just a drop in the bucket kind of a difference, you might want to, you might say, well, maybe home birth is not for me. But when I worked in the hospital system, I worked as through the health department as like a person who worked on system-based changes in maternal health. I realized that individually, if you can make a difference to one family at a time, it really has a trickle down or a pebbling out effect. And so for me, that's where I found my joy. That's where I found my niche. This is where I found that I could make a big difference, even though I came from the setting where I was helping make policy changes on a macro level. I still felt like individually, I wasn't seeing the change that I had hoped to be seeing on the day-to-day lives of the individuals I was hoping to be a part of impacting. So if you don't like home birth midwifery, if you and of course come to a place informed, right? So shadow people, understand what it really is, what it means to be a home birth midwife. And then you come to there and you say, you know what, this isn't for me. And it could be not because you don't like it. It could be that, oh, you don't have the capacity to live an on-call schedule 24/7. And that can be hard. And I'm a mom of 3, and that is hard. That is probably the hardest part of being a home birth midwife, constantly being on call. And so if that's something that feels like it's not budgeable in your life, then that might not be a good option for you. Otherwise, I love it. And I really can't say anything other than that. I'm sure my colleagues have other ideas, of course, coming from their experience as well.
I wanted to see if somebody wanted to add. Go, Annalee. Go.
Yeah, I would add that if your family can dissuade you away from home birth, then don't do it. You have to fully believe with your heart and soul that home birth is the best choice for those that come to the home birth community, as long as they're low risk pregnancies. Obviously we have a list of things that qualify for person coming into home birth experiences. But if you don't truly believe that it's safe and that, you can stand up against the wall and support home birth to anyone that comes at you about home birth, you're not ready to enter into the home birth space. And you should be doing research, and you should be, being in community, and until you feel in your spirit and your soul that it's right for you and that you can support it whenever people will come for you, because they will. So that's what I would add.
Thank you, Annalee. That was a great answer. I have a next question directed to Martine. What are the benefits from working in partnership in terms of strengthening your skill set or safety? Is there an impact on those areas, in your opinion, just from being in partnership?
Okay, I'll take that one. I'm Martine Jean-Baptiste. I've been a home birth midwife since 2002, midwife since 2000. But yes, I was doing labor support before people were calling them doulas, and I was on call 24/7 by myself. And I said, never again in my life would I do that. And so when I started my home birth practice, I was in partnership with another midwife, and we started out going to births together for all the births. And for us, it just helped strengthen our trust in each other and get to know each other's style, so that we never had a bat an eye of when someone else was on call. We both view them, the same way. We both had the same experiences where we could share and talk about it and just kind of lean on each other. And then, of course, that doesn't stay practical for the whole time that you're doing it. And then we started working with birth assistants to go out with us so that we can share call. But it just helped us gain confidence in each other's skills and got to know how the other partner practices. So I think it was, for us, it was invaluable to start off that way. And then, like I said, just for it to be able to be more sustainable and split call, even though you're still always on call, because when you're second call, you're on call. If the other midwife is busy catching babies, it was more helpful that way for us to start off.
Thank you, Martine. Thank you for sharing your experience. I'm sorry I didn't introduce you at first. Any hospital recommendations in New York, Westchester area for new graduate nurses as a future nurse midwife? I am in the Columbia Nurse Midwifery program and will be able to work as an RN this summer. Nicole, do you think you can answer this question since you are you serve that area?
You're on mute, Nicole.
I keep doing that. I'm sorry. My background is real noisy outside. Sorry. So the best hospitals to work at would be midwifery-led practices like Jacobi, MCB. Nyack Hospital has a midwifery-led practice. I would say research the hospitals that have midwives working there, because then you'll be able to work with them and see how midwives work in the hospital setting, running a floor, managing GYN care, postpartum care, and labor management. So the hospitals that I know of is Jacobi, MCB, Nyack, Mount Sinai, on Madison Avenue, the main campus. I'm not sure if Roosevelt has a midwifery run practice. What other hospitals are there, guys? Maimonides in Brooklyn. They have a huge midwifery practice. Anybody else know of any? Those are the ones that I know about.
Metropolitan, North Central Bronx, Woodhall.
Woodhall, yes.
Metropolitan, North Central Bronx.
Yeah, we said those.
Bronx, Lebanon.
Yes, Bronx. No, Bronx, Lebanon, they don't have midwives anymore, I think. They do. I think they just do prenatal care. They don't do L&D.
They do L&D.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Nicole. Somebody's asking if you have a minute, if you could write those hospitals down on the chat, please. Thank you.
Can I just add something?
Yes.
You can also think about, if you want to become a midwife, to be able to learn about patiently watching and not doing any kind of medical type intervention, of shadowing and working with a doula and going to births that way also, and shadowing work with doulas so that you could just see what it's like to figure out what's happening in the birth and what to do next without actually doing any kind of physical exams on your clients and stuff. I think is also a good and valuable experience, and to get a little bit more experience working with a newborn.
Thank you, Martine. let's see. I'll ask this question to Jen and Julia. Do you find that you have less boundaries with work or with personal work and life balance in doing home birth work?
Yeah, definitely less boundaries for me. I mean, I'm still relatively new to home birth, so it might be partly that. I mean, I worked as a labor and delivery nurse before this, which is hard boundaries. You don't know them before they come in, and when you sign off, you're done. You like, that's it. And then after midwifery school, I went right into home birth, but I would think that it's pretty similar with the hospital where, you know, once you're done with your shift, you're more or less done. I think there's probably more follow-up. And again, somebody else who's done more hospital midwifery could maybe answer a little bit better. But I find for myself with home birth, I'm answering people's questions well into the night or kind of first thing in the morning from my bed when I wake up, if I have emails or texts or anything like that. We also do a lot of home visits, so you feel like you have a little bit of a different connection to these people as well. But yeah, I think my answer would be yes. I have way fewer boundaries.
Thank you. Jen? Jen?
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to find the button to unmute myself. I think for me, it's a little different just because when I worked in a hospital, I have a lot of privilege that I serve the Chinese community and the Asian community. So, and also like I was given a lot of freedom for my chair at the time. So I deliver my private patients and a lot of people that I like. Whoever I see in the office, he kind of just like, okay, if you want to, you can deliver them in the hospital. So my boundary might not be a salad as a lot of people. So I still share my phone number to people. It's like, call me if you have any questions or issues. So I think I was kind of blessed in my journey in that way, where like I did bump into a lot of good people also in the hospital, a lot of good chief that guided me in a lot of way, even though they were like, why are you doing OB? Because you will not have a life. But, you know, overall, they're very, very supportive of like our choices. And in that way, that allowed me to practice pretty well and learned a lot in the medical setting and also at home and in birthing. Like I worked in the past 8 years. I simultaneously worked in a hospital and then a birthing center. And then later on, I transitioned into like just home birth right now. But because of that, I think my boundary is not as solid as like, oh, the traditional, like, oh, in the medical field where you just don't give phone. I have some favorite people still in the hospital. Then you're like, okay, still call me. But if not, I will say like, usually when you work in a hospital setting, because you see so many people in one day, you can see 60 people in the office. You're not going to share your number with 60 people a day. That's not your private clients. So in a home birth setting, you'll be able to build more of a relationship, I feel.
Thank you. Next question, Martin, maybe you can answer this question for us. What's the average range yearly income of a full-time home birth midwife?
Okay, I can answer that. It depends. And like you see already from the panel, some people, this was their only income when they started. Some people were juggling 2 jobs as they did it. So it depends on you and how much you want to make and how much you can take care of. But in reality, having a caseload of maybe 4 to 5 people do a month, maybe 6, is squeezing it is you know, sufficient for like a 2-person practice. So it really depends. So I'm just throwing out numbers. So if on an average you were to receive about $10,000, let's say, per birth, you can do the math. So that's just a general average. I'm not saying that if you had a Medicaid patient client, you'd be receiving way less than that. If you had someone that had a really great insurance, you might be receiving more than that. So there, it's a little bit of a range. So if you think of every birth, you know, $7,000 to $10,000, and sometimes it can take a few months to get paid, or quite a few months to get paid after doing a birth. So it depends. You can make a perfect living, comparable to somebody working in the hospital. You just have to look out for the other benefits the other benefits that you won't get when you are not working within a system. So you have to look, how would you purchase your health insurance for yourself? Do you have a partner that has good health insurance? Are you going to buy your insurance off the exchange? Start saving your own retirement fund. So getting a SEP IRA or something that you get benefits through the business to start putting away some money for when you retire. So all little things like that add into your cost of what it takes to do business, so to speak. But it's a big range, but yes, you can make a perfectly good living. Hope that answered your question.
Thank you, Martine. Thank you. How do you keep yourselves motivated when things get hard? Eva and Annalee, would you like to answer that question? Who wants to start? Eva?
It's funny because sometimes, and I'm sure that all of us, if you guys probably have gotten the feeling that the home birth community in our collective is one where we lean on each other, where we are indeed a community, and where we share our experiences and lean on into each other for help and support. And so, yeah, I'll find myself saying to my friends, I'll text Julia or whatever and say, why am I doing this again? Can you remind me, as I'm on my way to a birth? And really, and again, I am also a newer home birth midwife. And so a lot of this part of my journey in midwifery is still a lot of acquisition, a lot of trusting myself, a lot of learning even. And so when things do get hard, it is wonderful to have a community to lean on each other, to just speak to, knowing that they know what we're going through, they know what I'm going through, that we're all in this together, that we're not alone, and that at the end of the day, we are making a difference, and we're giving people options and autonomy in a space where the current system isn't. We're doing something very different. We're doing something very special. What we do stays with these people and carries them through for the rest of their lives and even their children's lives. And I'm not gonna lie, when I walk down the street and I hear, I run into a family member that says, "Oh my goodness, you caught my baby," or, I'll be with my kids and they'll be like, "Your mom, she helped me bring this baby into this world." And it just feels so good to know that all of the hard work and all of that you do to pour into the work is appreciated and is wanted and is loved. And so it is hard, and it does feel like a balance. And it, every day there are hard days where you're just like, I'm not going to quit. But it's like what I tell my kids, right? You can decide you're not going to quit on a good day. And if on a good day you want to quit, then maybe you shouldn't be into it. But if on a really good day you say to yourself, you're right, I can't quit, then you're probably in the right place.
Beautifully said, Ava. I don't really have anything to add. That's it. Community, having people to lift you up when it's hard. And then self-care is really important. How do you reset yourself? And after you reset yourself and you have a good day, then if you're like, it's not for me, then maybe. But make sure that first you reset yourself, take care of yourself, take care of your heart, your energy, and then work through whatever you need to work through.
That's really beautiful. Thank you both for sharing that. There's one last question we'll get to, and then we'll be wrapping up. That'll probably get us to our end time. If The midwives, if you want to add any of your information into the chat, so if people want to get in touch with you all directly, that would be a nice place for us all to add information. And if anyone who's here on the chat, I mean on the town hall wants to add information there for us to be able to look back and get in touch with you later, then it would be great to have that there. And we have a question here that, of course, now let me find it again. That's asking about. It says here the idea of home birth is still very scary for many women, even though it's what women have been doing for the longest. How and what do you all recommend to get women to see invaluable assets that is midwifery care for their health needs and for home birth instead of going to the hospital? And that's a really big question. Even with the influx of people coming to home birth after 2020, I think still the percentage is somewhere around 2% of people who are giving birth out of the hospital. Maybe we've gotten close to 3, I'm not sure, but it's still very low. Majority of people go to the hospital for a lot of different reasons. But I think that if I have an opportunity to talk to somebody about the kind of care that they're looking for, I think what can be a problem is that a lot of times in the hospital, people don't fully understand, when they're going to the hospital, they don't fully understand what care really looks like in a hospital. So I think even just when we put out our statistics, and if you look at, our C-section rate is 4.6%. Compared to what's happening in the hospital now, that's getting closer to 30-35% in some New York City hospitals. So I think, when people say, well, I want to avoid interventions and I want to avoid a C-section, I want to avoid all of this. And one of my doula friends said it best. She said, well, you don't go to Burger King for sushi. So if you're looking for a birth, no interventions, holistic care, low C-section rate, then maybe it makes sense to explore other options. And what I love is that people are exploring other options, and all we can do is just continue to talk about the safety in home birth. We did the town hall earlier this year that had our statistics and talking about safety, because I think some of what is the dangers around home birth are not necessarily real, and people hear one big scary story and they think that that's every story, and they don't hear the thousands of births that go unnoticed because they just happen in the quiet of someone's home with a midwife and a birthing person and their family. And it's just it doesn't get publicized and not everybody knows about it. It's just a thing that happens. And so I think the more that we talk about it and the more that we talk about our statistics, I think that that's going to really be how we're going to, hopefully help those people transition into the care that they're really looking for. So that's my answer to that. Daisy had said, asked a question about how do we unpack a hard birth, and I'm sure that every midwife on this call has a different way for doing that. And Annalee mentioned self-care, and that's something that we talk a lot about. And we have community where we meet once a month in a collective of home birth midwives, and we talk about hard births and hard situations and offer each other a lot of support. So I think that's, one way that we unpack as a community, but I think there's a lot of different ways that we unpack individually. So anyway, I think we're getting to the end. Does anybody else, Tania, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think you pretty much answered. I was going to answer, Daisy, but yeah, you pretty much answered what I was going to say. Everybody's putting their emails to connect, and I guess thank you everybody for attending tonight's town hall. Hopefully it won't be the first one and the last one. We're hoping to have many more in the future. And again, nyhomebirth.com is our website. If you want to reach any of us, if you want to refer any clients or any people you know or want to learn more about home birth, it's all on the website. And thank you so much for attending this presentation. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.